Sherrod, we desperately need training camp to get here because we need to see some people. We need to talk to some people. And there's a lot of things we're really interested in terms of this Celtics team and how they're going to look. But it's the off season. We're dragging, looking for stuff to talk about. And one of the things I always love are lists. And we've got one. We've got the top 100 lists heading into the season are starting to come out. SI releasing theirs. And these always create a little bit of controversy and some talking points. And one of them is everybody's favorite lightning rod player, Marcus Smart, comes in at 60 on the SI list, which is pretty good ranking for Marcus. It's pretty high, I would say. I remember last year he made it into the high 30s on the ESPN list, and that blew a lot of people's minds. 60 might be more in line with where he actually should be, but I'll ask you this, Sherrod. This is the expectations for who Marcus Smart is going to be this season, which if you're the 60th best overall player, that means there's 30 NBA teams, 2 players per team. You're one of the 2 to 3 best players on any team. That seems, like I said, a little bit lofty. I actually don't know if you looked around the NBA, if you could say with certainty Marcus Smart would be the 2nd best player on any single franchise, maybe the 3rd on a few. But it's a pretty lofty ranking, which means expectations for him are relatively high in year 1 of you're the starter, you're the starting point guard, it's your team. Go out and and the rock is yours.
Yeah, I think Ime Udoka kind of laid that out earlier on this summer when he talked about Marcus. He's looking for him to be more of a point guard, more of a facilitator, and also obviously be an elite defender. And when you talk about Marcus in that vein, it's clear that you see him having the ball in his hands a lot. You see him being more of the brain trust, if you will, of how your offense and defense is going to run and how your team's overall flow is going to be. And for Marcus and the Celtics to be successful, he has to be great in that role. He can't just be good. He has to be a player that is worthy of the number 60 ranking among all players in the league.
Yeah, and again, it is relatively high when you think of, you're basically talking about 2 players per team. You're putting Marcus into a big 3 sort of conversation to say, yeah, you've got to be a foundational piece alongside the 2 J's here in order for this to be successful. And again, it's one publications list, but it's always interesting to talk about just in terms of what's it going to be like this year. And again, the expectations are high. One person who was one of the first ones left out of the top 100 was our man, Rob Williams. And I'm going to say, more so than anybody else, and we talked about this a lot during the course of the season and early on in the offseason, the importance of Rob Williams not only being healthy but taking another leap. And to me, how I feel. I've always thought if there's a 3rd all-star on this team, it's Rob Williams. There's no question about that. I don't think it's Marcus. I don't think it's anybody else. I don't think it's any of the other young kids that ever get to that. It's Rob Williams. And in order for this team to get past where they were last year or better than a 2nd round exit sort of team, you're going to need people to step up. And the Rob Williams to me is the biggest X factor. It wouldn't be stunning if he came in this year, Sherrod, and put up all defensive numbers and was on the cusp of an all-star selection, or if we saw a guy who played a few games, then got hurt, was a little bit ineffective, rides the bench from time to time, splits minutes with Al Horford. I really don't know which version we're going to get. And we have no visibility into this. We haven't seen him. We have no Instagram workouts, nothing. The person I'm most intrigued to see when we get to go to Media Day in a couple of weeks is Rob Williams.
Him and Ime Udoka, all right, we're all looking to see what the hell is going on with Rob. The thing about Rob is that the only reason he's outside of that top 100 is because of that very fact that he doesn't stay healthy long enough to where you can get a full evaluation of his impact. I agree that he has more potential to be an all-star, in part because of his potential, but also because there's just a lack of centers other than Joel Embiid and Vucevic. There's really not a lot of centers in the Eastern Conference that you can look at and just kind of pretty much check them off as being all-stars. So Rob is definitely, I think if he can stay healthy, he will be in that conversation. But to your other point, Rob has to be, and I'm going to go Brad Stevens on you, the best version of himself.
There's no doubt about that.
Season long. We can't have this 10, 15 game stretches where he's amazingly awesome, and then 10, 15 game stretches where he's just awful.
Yeah.
There has to be consistency with his play this year if he is supposed to frankly, be one of the top 100 players, which I think from a talent standpoint, he is that good. But he has to prove it where it matters on the court.
Yeah, what I will say is we didn't see a Rob regression from the point that the Celtics last season figured out when Brad finally got there, and it took him a little while to recognize I should be playing this guy real minutes now, and we got to stop babying. You had that stretch when he was inserted in the starting lineup, and it was 11-2 or 11-3. You had that terrible Embiid game where he just couldn't stay disciplined enough to stay out of foul trouble, and then a couple rough games after that. But coming back from his injury and then into the playoffs before he kind of was forced out by the other injury that was kind of hobbling him throughout there, he didn't look like he was playing poorly. It was simply a physical and a health limitation on him. Outside of those couple of games, the Embiid and the one or two that followed, I think we did see the best version of Rob for most of last season, some lapses aside, but everybody has lapses. So Rob Williams, I think, is unfairly judged because of past history, but we did see a huge leap last year. You need another one this year for the Celtics to get deeper than a one and done or into the second round. So again, Rob is the massive wild card on the outside looking in the top 100. I think this will be the last year ever that Rob Williams is not considered a top 100 NBA player. But that's me. That's my guy, Rob. We know this.
That's your guy. And I'm going to stick with Nesmith will be an all-star within the next 3 years.
I love that. I love
it's
that.